everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Sports Prodigies with your hosts. I'm Aiden.
And I'm Swoggle.
And today we will be having our guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Sure Boomin, a.k.a. Cheddar Boy. Say what's up.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
You can find his music
good,
on
Mason?
SoundCloud if you want to listen. He's dropping a new album soon. Go run
Yes,
that
sir.
up.
Yes, sir.
Today we are going to be talking about the upcoming UFC 249. So I'm going to hand this off to my host, Swoggle, and you can lead us today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about UFC 249. I'm so excited for this event. I mean, we haven't had a major sporting event since March, and although some people aren't into UFC yet, I started watching it like 5 years ago, and it's one of my favorite things to watch. Anyways, we'll start off with the should we go from top to bottom or bottom to top?
What do you think, Mason?
Honestly, I think we should go from bottom to top so we can get more intense as we go up for the better fights.
All right, yeah. So, the first fight on the card is Ryan Spann versus Sam Alvey. I guess I'll get started. Yeah, so I have Ryan Spann winning this fight. Sam Alvey fights can tend to be very boring. He's a counter striker, which tends to, but he's got very good power, which tends to make the fight very, stalemate and just a little back and forth looking at each other. And Ryan Spann's very long, and he's got good wrestling games, so he should be able to get inside the reach of Alvey. And Ryan Spann's an up-and-coming prospect, and Alvey's kind of getting at the tail end of his career here. So,
okay, yeah, I'll go. I also have Ryan Spann. I think Spann is a faster fighter. He right now has a seven match win streak, and I think he's also a better striker and grappler, like you said. So I would have Spann winning this one. What about you, Mason?
Couldn't agree more with both you guys. I also have Spann. He's just bigger, faster, more powerful, everything about him. Aiden, you said he's on a 7 win streak, 6 of those which are knockouts. So I think this will end in a knockout.
yep. The next fight on the card is Bryce Mitchell versus Charles Rosa. Aiden, why don't you start talking?
For this fight, I have Mitchell. I think Mitchell is a better grappler, and I don't think Rosa is not really calculated when he's fighting. I think Mitchell's undefeated right now, and I think he's going to win by a rear naked choke.
So you have Mitchell beating
Yes.
Rosa by rear naked choke? So here's my thing with this fight. It's going to be – these two are great grapplers and great wrestlers and great submission games and great on the ground. Charles Rosa used to be a top prospect, but he's had many injuries, and he had one really bad one. So he's starting to really finally get healthy and find his stride. So I'm actually going to take Charles Rosa in this fight. It should be a fun grappling affair. Charles Rosa just beat Manny Bermudez, who's an up-and-coming prospect, just kind of like same way these two fight, ground guy, submission guy. So I think Rosa's more experienced. Mitchell's another prospect. I think Rosa beats Mitchell here, but Mitchell's still going to have a good.
I'm going to have to disagree on that one. I'm going with Aiden. I got Mitchell winning this one after he hit that twister. One of the craziest finishes I've ever seen. Just who knows what else he can do.
Yeah, I believe that was the second one in UFC history.
Yeah, it was. Just up and coming. Another prospect, like you said. Just excited to see what he can do. Got to take him.
Yeah. All right. The next fight on the card, we have Vicente Luque versus Nico Price. I'll start off here and just get quick to the point. To me, Vicente Luque is very underrated. He should definitely win this fight. I actually think I think Nico Price he's just like a tough guy. Like he can land the punch. Like he'll win some fights, lose some fights. His fights will always be entertaining. But I think Luque is just too precise. His striking is too much there. He's got a great ground game, submission game. It's gonna be too much.
Mason, you could go now.
All right, so I'm gonna have to disagree with that one. I got Price winning, and this is also their second time fighting. These two, so I think. And Price lost the first fight, so I think he's gonna come back for revenge on this fight. He's like very good striker. He's kind of lethal in the octagon. But I think another reason he's going to win is because Luque has had 7 fights since, and he's just kind of getting more out of shape in every fight. So I think Price is going to take it up.
What do you mean? What do you mean he's getting out of shape?
Not getting out
more
of shape.
Out of shape
He's just
every
like
fight?
getting more damage. He's getting battered in these fights. I just don't think he's going to be able to like win the way he did last time. Like he's just not as good as he used to be, almost.
Well, he had a war with Brian Barberina.
He did, yeah. But he's just like kind of like losing his like strength the way he was, like, you know.
No, yeah,
I
what's
don't
it
know
called?
about that.
I understand what you're trying to say,
I
Mason.
disagree with those comments.
I think Mason's really trying to say how like it's just like in any sport. Like once you go through it so many times, and especially in the UFC, going through so much damage of getting hit and hit and hit. It's been 7 fights since the last time they fought. I'm assuming that Luque has been through a lot of damage. If it's been 7 fights, I don't personally know how many fights Price has been through. But just like in any sport, especially another comparison, football, every time you keep getting hit and hit and hit, this is why so many guys are retiring, because they're in so much pain. I'm not saying Luque's in pain. I'm just trying to say your body's getting damaged over time, a lot in the UFC.
Yep.
Yeah, but that Vicente Luque hasn't really – he's had a couple hard fights, but he's been starching guys in the first round mostly.
That's a good point. That'd be a good fight. We'll just have to see who wins.
Yeah, I think it's personally going to be a great fight. I think it's going to be a war, and I do agree with my co-host Swoggle. I do have Luque. I think Luque did win the last battle, like Mason said. I think he's better on the ground personally, so I definitely have Luque winning this.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right, the next fight on the card, the first prelim, Uriah Hall versus Jacare Souza. Mason, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so for this fight, I'm taking Jacare. And the reason for this is mainly because Hall has very weak defense. And against someone like Jacare, who's a very lethal fighter, I don't think he's going to be able to stand like there for very long. I think Jacare is going to get to him and finish the fight quickly.
Aiden?
Yeah, I think Hall is more flashy of a fighter, but I do think Jacare has more effective kicks and that he's an overall better boxer. So I do have Jacare in this fight.
Yeah, so I agree with you. I have Jacare, but, I mean, these two are just totally, completely different fighters. Jacare is a decorated BJJ player, 4th-degree black belt. He's got a 26-8 record in his career with 14 by submission. Uriah Hall is a striker. He's the flashier play. He's more of a counter striker, though. He was supposed to be a top prospect. He's still very talented. He should be a solid fight. I have Jacare here. I just think he's just too much in the grappling game. I think Uriah Hall's defense is a little suspect, and I also think his counter punching is very powerful and can catch him.
Mm-hmm.
The next fight on the card, Carla Esparza versus Michelle Waterson. Aiden, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be a very tough fight. I think it's going to go all the way to the end, and I would pick Waterson. I think Waterson's going to win by a decision. Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough fight overall.
Yeah, so this fight is Carla Esparza is basically a wrestler. She does not have much striking. I'm a little torn on who's going to win here because if Waterson gets taken down, she could end up on her back for the whole round. So, I mean, Waterson's got the better striking. She's a better BJJ. I'm going to pick Waterson here. It's going to be a tough fight, probably a lot of grappling, grinding it out. But I think Waterson pulls it out as far as getting up there in age. And Waterson's striking is going to be a little too much.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also take Waterson in this fight. Just younger, better kicks, like her grappling's a little bit better. I think she's definitely going to be able to take out the win. But I also agree that it's going to be a long fight, and it'll probably go by decision.
All right. The next fight is Alexei Olynyk versus Fabricio Werdum. I'll start it off, actually. So basically, Olynyk is from Russia. He's 40 years old. and he's got a very good submission game. He's the only fighter in UFC history to have multiple Ezekiel chokes, which is basically like a choke from the bottom where you're the other fighter's mount position, and you choke him out from the bottom. So he's fought very good competition. He wins his fights. Sometimes he loses them. He's a little inconsistent, but Werdum hasn't fought in 2 years. He got suspended for failed drug test, so he hasn't fought in 2 years. And I mean, he's up there in age now. He's got, there's cage rust, and he hasn't fought in 2 years, so he could have a little bit of cage rust. He's 40 years old. I mean, this doesn't have to do anything with this card, but I picked him to beat Cain Velasquez when everyone was picking Cain back in the day, and he did. So honestly, Werdum's the big favorite. I think Olynyk's up there in age too, and I think Werdum's just the more talented fighter. He's better striker by far, in his grappling is just in par with Olynyk, if not better. So Werdum's gonna win the fight.
I'm gonna go next. So I also have Werdum. I think it's going to be tough that he is coming off that 10-month layoff. I think Werdum is a better striker. He has a better jab and 1-2 combo. I think that he's really good on the ground, like you said, and if he gets Olynyk to the ground, it's going to be a definite advantage for Werdum. So I think Werdum is going to win this fight.
I don't know about definite. Olynyk's very scrappy on the ground, but
we'll see. I definitely have Werdum.
Yeah, I agree with both you guys. I think also from coming off that big suspension after kind of like an embarrassing moment getting caught like that, I think he's going to want to reprove himself and just put himself back in there to show who he is, what he can do. And I agree with the strikes and the grappling. He can definitely take this up.
Yeah. So the next fight on the card is, surprisingly enough, my two favorite fighters are both fighting on this card. Here's one of my favorite fighters. They're 1A and 1B, basically. I love them both. But Donald Cerrone versus Anthony Pettis. Mason, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so I was kind of torn on this fight because I'm a big fan of Cowboy. I like the way he just does everything pretty much. He has those killer kicks. It's just he's a great fighter. But after a little bit more research, I have to go with Pettis on this one. Cowboy is really just taking a downfall. And Pettis' past few fights, he's been able to compete with some really good fighters. So I think Pettis is definitely going to be able to take the dub on Cowboy.
Aiden?
Yeah, so for everybody that doesn't watch the UFC, like Swoggle, personally, I don't watch it that often, but I do watch it occasionally. I'm assuming everybody listening has probably watched the Conor McGregor-Donald Cerrone fight where Conor McGregor ended it very early in the first round. That's not a good representation of Donald Cerrone, I don't think. I don't think that people should pick Pettis because of what happened to Donald Cerrone on that live stage against Conor McGregor. But I do also have Pettis. I think Pettis, he looked really sharp when he versed Nate Diaz in the fight. Like Mason said, I think Cowboy is declining a lot, and I think Pettis is still stable, and I think Pettis is going to win this one pretty early.
Mm-hmm. So both these fighters used to be the top notch of the lightweight division. Pettis was the champion. He was the most dominant fighter in lightweight history. And then he got mauled by Rafael dos Anjos. And ever since that fight, he just hasn't been the same. He got that punch against Stephen Thompson, that knockout, which was very nice. But he just still hasn't been the same fighter since. Now, Donald Cowboy Cerrone, I mean, he's in every record book you can think of in the UFC. Most fights in the UFC, most finishes. He got the famous quote, anytime, anywhere, any place. I mean, the guy fights on 3 weeks now. He fights whenever he wants. Whenever he can get a fight, basically, he's fighting. He's my favorite fighter with Francis Ngannou. But I love Cowboy. I love the way he fights. They fought before, actually. You guys failed to bring that up, which Pettis beat Cerrone, but that was before the Dos Anjos. That was Pettis' prime. That was in Pettis' prime. So I really think Donald here, he's never lost 4 fights in a row. He's on that 3-fight losing streak right now. He is what you saw in the Conor McGregor fight is what Donald Cerrone is. He starts slow, and Conor McGregor took full advantage of him starting slow and knocked him out. But like he said Donald Cerrone showed up. Cowboy didn't. He needs that cowboy mentality, and I think he got it back. So I really think Donald Cerrone can pull out the win here.
Yeah, what I was saying earlier is I understand he does start slow, but what I was trying to say is like he's not a bad fighter just because he got beat by Conor McGregor.
He's definitely not a bad fighter. He's one of the most decorated fighters in UFC history.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the people who don't watch the UFC that often and only watch that one fight where he versed McGregor. Because from a first-time UFC fighter, they would say, "Oh my God, this guy sucks. McGregor wrecked him." But he's a very decorated fighter, like you're saying. So I'm just clarifying for the people out there who are listening and don't watch the UFC that often.
Yep. All right. The next fight, we'll get on our first fight of the main card, pay-per-view. Greg Hardy versus Yorgan De Castro. Aiden, I know you got a little bit to say about this fight, so I'll let you start.
Yeah, so Greg Hardy is ex-Cowboy. Obviously is not in the league anymore. Definitely had some problems, but I think he's in the right place now. This is one of the most dangerous sports ever, and I think that Greg Hardy he's very athletic, explosive. He's bigger, he's stronger. I think the only thing that people worry about is his cardio, but I definitely think Hardy's going to win this one. I love my guy.
Mason.
Yeah, I agree with Aiden on that one. Got to go with Hardy, a Cowboy. Love him. He's bigger, just more athletic, stronger. The only thing that is wrong, though, is the cardio. But another thing I noticed is that all his wins came from knockouts. So I think maybe this fight could end in a knockout, but I think this is going to be a good one.
Yeah, so Greg Hardy's depiction in the UFC, at least by the fans' part, people do not like him because of his domestic violence history. I've been to a UFC event when he fought. The crowd was booing him. I couldn't even hear Bruce Buffer announcing the names. So I really think he's done a good job to just cancel that out and put everything behind him and just move on with his life, which I kind of applaud for him for that. Obviously not previous things, but
obviously
I think he's the more talented athletic fighter here. He's just going to be too powerful for De Castro. I think the UFC is kind of handing De Castro to him. They want Hardy to win. They want to build a brand with Greg Hardy, being that he's a former NFL player. So I think the Hardy gets it done. Yeah. So the next fight on the card is Jeremy Stephens versus Calvin Kattar. I'll start us off here. Jeremy Stephens is one of the biggest badasses in the UFC. I mean, the guy can knock you out any moment in the fight. He's one of the most powerful fighters in the featherweight and lightweight divisions. Calvin Kattar's kind of up and coming, but he's up and coming. He's new to UFC fans, but like he's there. He's beating good fighters. This should be a really good fight. Calvin Kattar is the favorite, but I'm going Jeremy Stephens here. I think he's the veteran here, and he's gonna land that punch, push the pressure, push the pace, and find Kattar's head and knock him out.
Okay, Mace, you could go.
I have to go against you on that one. I got Kattar. I think he's a very skillful fighter. And you were saying how you think Stephens is going to connect with his head. I think he's going to be able to dodge those hits. But if Stephens can get to his legs, which is his weak point, I think then definitely Stephens will have an advantage there. And I'll be able to distract him and then get that hit on your head you were talking about. So this is going to be a good one. Yeah, I agree with that. But I got to take Kattar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with Mason as well. I do have Kattar. I think he's one of the best boxers in this division. But I do think that Stephens' power is very big, and if he lands a punch, then Stephens is probably going to win it. But I just don't think he'll land that punch on Kattar, so I got to go with Kattar.
Yeah, I mean, I like Kattar. He's beating Ricardo Lamas, who's a great featherweight fighter. I mean, he's a great fighter. I just think Jeremy Stephens can land that punch as he's done before. Anyways, next fight is my other 1A and 1B favorite fighter, Francis Ngannou, and he is fighting Jairzinho Rosenstrike. And so let me tell you a little story about Ngannou here. He was the first UFC event I went to. He was the first fight on the card, and I saw that he was on the card, and I looked him up, and he was this big guy, Jack, from Cameroon, and he was from Cameroon, migrated to France. He walked to France. He was homeless, had no money, no family, nothing, and he walked into a boxing gym, and they let him stay there and sleep there, and that's how he became an MMA fighter. And he knocked out that Luis Henrique in his first UFC fight, and ever since then I've loved him. And But anyways, he's the most powerful puncher in the heavyweight division. He's knocked out Alistair Overeem, Cain Velasquez, Andre Arlovsky. The guy's just powerful beast. And Rosenstrike, I mean, he's up and coming. He's knocked out. He just knocked out Overeem too. He's very powerful, just like Ngannou. Should be a knockout here, and it's going to go Ngannou's way.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's Ngannou, just the strikes that I've seen are some of the best strikes I've ever seen. It's kind of ridiculous what this guy does, honestly. He's just humongous. He's so powerful. It's crazy what this guy can do. But Rosenstrike can take a few hits, but I don't think he's going to be able to handle Ngannou.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have Ngannou as well. I think it's going to be one of the best fights on the card. Ngannou is longer. He's faster. He's bigger. So I got to go with Ngannou.
Yep. Next fighter in the card is Henry Cejudo versus Dominic Cruz. Mason?
For this one, I'm taking Cejudo. I think he's definitely a favorite to win. But a reason I'm taking him is this is a very short notice fight for Cruz. And he's also been out of the UFC for a while. And Cejudo's just younger. He's faster. He's stronger. I think he's definitely going to take an easy dub on this one.
Yeah. I actually have Cejudo here, too. Cruz has been injured a lot. He hasn't fought in a while. He's one of the best in the bantamweight division history, but, he's just inactive. I think Cejudo – I think a lot of people don't like Cejudo for some of the things he does, but I actually really like him. I don't think he gets the respect he deserves. And I think he wins this one pretty easily.
Yeah, I agree with all of you. I do have Cejudo. Cruz is coming off the longest layoff of his career. Like you said, Mason, it's short notice. And Cejudo is very good at adapting. So I think he'll take this one over Cruz.
And now the main event, Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje. I think this fight could be one of the best fights in UFC history, and I think this fight's going to be crazy. I think both these guys are just going to go in there, and they're just going to stand right in front of each other, and they're going to throw, and they're going to throw hard. Tony Ferguson just picks people apart. Gaethje just picks people apart. They're going to go back and forth, back and forth. It's going to be one of those fire fights. You're going to be at the top of your seat. It's going to be a hell of a fight. But I think Tony Ferguson's just too much. He's lost one fight in his last 16 fights and has an active 12-fight win streak. This was supposed to be Khabib for him. He's been gunning for that fight. He's not losing. He wants Khabib. Tony Ferguson by way of finish, late 4th or 5th round.
Mason, you could go.
All right. So this might be a little bit of a controversial opinion, but for some reason, I really think that Gaethje is going to be able to take this one. He's a bit younger. He's really strong. He has some great clips, but if he isn't able to finish Ferguson in the first few rounds, then I don't think he's going to be able to win. But I think he'll definitely be able to get in there if he just puts a lot of pressure on him. And he's the underdog in this fight. It's very low notice, though. So this is going to be a great fight. It's going to be a dog fight. I just can't wait.
Yeah, I agree with my co-host Swoggle. I think this is going to be the most violent fight. I think Gaethje coming off 3 to 4 week notice, that always sucks. I think if it goes past the first 2 rounds, it's Ferguson. But if Gaethje can get it done in the first 2 rounds, then I think Gaethje. But Ferguson's a different fighter every fight, so it's kind of hard to prepare for him. So I think it's going to go deep, and I got Ferguson winning.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right. Well, that wraps up all the fights. I'm just going to give you a couple of my best bets for the card in case you want to place any bets on the fights. I think Tony Ferguson minus 170 is good value. I think the fight going over 2.5 rounds in the Tony Ferguson fight is good value. I believe Jeremy Stevens plus 190 is a good value. Jacare Souza minus 125 is great value. And Donald Cerrone plus 115, and you should lock those in. Anyways, that concludes our episode today. It was great having you on the show, Mason.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I enjoyed
What's it called? Everybody, his SoundCloud will be in the description at the bottom.
Thank you.
What's called? Thank you everybody for listening. If you are not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you are not following our Instagram at Sports Prodigies, go run that up. We will be posting notifications on there about when episodes will be coming out every Tuesday and Friday. And we can't wait for the UFC 249. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will hear from you guys on Tuesday. Peace.
Peace.